It equals 0. What's going on the left-hand side? A times B. So you do know something about A and or B. What do you know about A and or B? One of them or even both of them, right, could be 0. So maybe that's true and maybe this is true. This idea is called the zero product property. Okay, and it's very powerful because the only number that works with is 0. Okay, so we're going to use that to solve quadratics. So today is all about solving quadratics, and we're going to do it 3 different ways. Everybody here should know all 3 of those ways. You might forget one of them, but they are factoring, completing the square, and the quadratic formula. All right? For the most part, if I ask you to solve a quadratic, I don't really care how you do it as long as you get the right answer. So you can always do the quadratic formula. However, the quadratic formula is a little bit slower, and there's a chance that you may make a mistake with your signs. So if you are good at factoring, factoring is very quick and easy. Okay? So that's what we're going to start on. I'm going to let's do 54. All right, so whenever you solve a quadratic, and this is actually going to be a quadratic in the long run, then you need to get everything set equal to 0. And it doesn't matter which method you're going to do. Okay, that's the first thing. If you guys are taking notes, you guys got to decide, because it doesn't bother me. I'll write out those steps like I did, previously. Or you need to get better at taking notes. Because if you just have a bunch of example problems sitting there without any notes on them, then, I don't know, maybe you got a good memory and maybe, know what to do. But the very first thing when you're solving a function of a higher power, or an equation with a higher power, is to get everything set equal to 0. The other thing to keep in mind is that the significance of the biggest exponent. Does anyone know what the significance of the biggest exponent is? Yeah. But degree. Did you say degree or did you say index? It's a degree. So what is the degree of this is 3. What is the significance of the 3? You want to remember? It's telling you how many potential answers there are going to be. Okay, so doesn't mean that you can find all 3, but you should be looking for 3. All right, but we're going to do this one by factoring. We got 4 groups. There is no greatest common factor. So we're going to group them 2 and 2. And what can we take out of the first 2?
X squared.
And what's left over?
X minus 3x. Or x minus 3.
Okay. What about the second 2?
1.
You said -1, and so then x minus 3. So then we can take an x minus 3 out, and we're left with
X squared minus 1.
Okay. We can actually still factor the x squared minus 1 because that's difference of squares. What does that factor into?
X minus 1, x plus 1.
X minus 1 and x plus 1. So is that okay with everybody? So now we're going to use this idea that we started with, that when things are multiplied together and they equal 0, then they must be, at least one of them must be 0. So just because we have 3 of them now doesn't mean that anything is different. Okay? You take your factors and you set them equal to 0, and then you solve them. I'll try to do this up on the side here. So then we have x minus 3 equals 0. So one of our solutions is 3. We have x minus 1 equals 0. So another solution is 1. And then finally we have x plus 1 equals 0. So there are our 3 solutions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So again, if you're good at factoring, then that's a pretty good way to go. Okay? And on a problem like that, you probably do have to factor. Quadratic wouldn't work because we don't have a, b, and c necessarily. But other than that, you do a times c, etc. Good enough? Is that okay?
Would it look like that over here?
This one's a cubic, so it would look like, I don't know what you just drew, but it would look like kind of like a wave, but it doesn't, so it would look like something like this, or maybe like this.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, something like that. All right, good question, man. All right. Super easy. Let's look at number 60. So you can totally do this one by factoring, but since we don't have a term, the b term, does that make sense to everyone that we don't have the b term? Since we don't have that term, you can also just solve it like a normal equation, but how many answers should we be able to find?
2.
How do we know?
Because the highest exponent.
Because the exponent, okay? So then I'm going to divide this one by 9. And we have x squared equals 25 over 9. Now, the opposite of squaring is square rooting. But if you are doing an equation and you decide that you need to take a square root, then you better get a positive and a negative out of that. Okay? So we're going to take the square root of both sides. And like I said, when we do that, you get a plus or minus square root of 25 over 9. And then what's the square root of 25?
5.
And what's the square root of 9?
3.
So then positive and negative 5/3. Is that okay?
X plus 5 over 3x minus 5 over 3.
If you were factoring, yeah, but you would have probably done difference of squares. But yeah, that would be equivalent. That would be the step before, right? Yep, so good. You guys are making me happy today. I wasn't happy, and then I saw you guys, and now I'm happy. Just like that. Probably only lasts a couple more minutes, but you know, what are you going to do? All right, we happy? Is that okay?
That's good.
What's up? What's up? What is that?
Mushy.
Talking crap.
What he does best.
Is it? Is he good at it?
No, not really.
It's just what he does a lot. Yeah, okay. Well, what are you going to do? If you're going to do it that often, then you should work on it and get better at it. All right, I'm going to do 2 of these. This is completing the score.
Line.
Well, I don't know if he's lying or not, but the crap I've heard you talk is pretty weak. So,
Yeah, you heard me talk crap.
I thought that's what you were doing.
I just put it out for Saturday.
What? What's happening Saturday?
I'm gonna put it out for the game on Saturday.
Ooh, I think that's a threat.
Terry Daciel.
With what? Your like teeth or something?
Oh, pick it up and stomp on it.
You guys need to hug and make up. We're all feeling sad about you guys right now. All right.
Oh.
All right, so here is completing the square. I'm going to try to write the notes down on the side, but as you see, I don't have a lot of room. The first step, I'm going to write all the steps, and I'm going to do this once. I do this for you guys because I care. It's hard to say that out loud, but it's true. All right, divide everything by A. Divide everything, oh good. Divide by A. Because completing the square does not work if A is something besides 1. Okay? It's the first thing you got to make sure you understand. This one we don't have to do that on because A is already 1. So step number 2, move C to the other side. So how are we going to do that? All right. So then we're going to have, do this in a, change the color up for you. So then we're going to have x squared plus 8x. And then I'm going to leave some space and then negative 14. Is that okay with everyone? This is where it's going to be tough for me to write the steps out. So I'm going to try. Well, at least I'm going to say use B to create a new number. And I'm going to explain that here in a second. Our goal in completing the square is to make the left-hand side into a perfect square trinomial. And what that means is that we'll be able to write it like, for instance, x minus 3 quantity squared. Because then we can take the square root. That is our goal. But we have to create a number that will make that happen. And this is how you do that. So you take b off to the side. And I don't have enough room to write this, so you're going to have to add if you need it. We're going to take b off to the side. I'm going to put it right here. We'll change up, put green. Look at this. So pretty this time. So you're going to take it off to the side and you multiply it by 1/2 every time. So what is 8 times 1/2? 4. Then you're going to take that number and square it. What is 4 squared? 16. And so now we have to add that to both sides. So I'm going to come back and write that down. So 4, add to both sides. But there is a shortcut. So I'm not going to add 16 to both sides. I'm going to add 4 squared to the right. I'm going to show you why here in a second. So then we have x squared plus 8x plus 4 squared equals negative 14 plus 16. We have to keep the equation balanced. Does that make sense why we have to add it to both sides? All right. So there's a shortcut going to come up over here. Okay. And the shortcut, but I'm going to write it out so that you can kind of see it in action here for a second. So let me move down here for a second. So really, does it make sense that right now we have x squared plus 8x plus 16? Does that make sense to everybody?
You're just talking about the left side, right?
I'm just talking about the left side only right now. Okay? Well, I'm just going to write like this so you can understand where it comes from. But you're not going to do it this way because you want to do the shortcut. But I want to show you that it does work. So factors of 16 that add to give you 8 or what? 4 and 4. So can everyone accept that this is going to be quantity squared, x plus 4 quantity squared?
Yeah.
All right, so now everything is set up for this to work. So we have the x, right? And the x comes from right here. And then we're going to take this sign, no matter what it is, plus or minus, and we're going to drop it down. And then, right, if you look down here again, right, we got 4 squared. And we got 4 squared right here, right? So then this is going to be 4 squared. And you might say, yeah, so what? You just factored it that way a second ago. But when fractions start showing up, you're going to like that. Was there any questions right now about anything? Yep.
You're just taking out the 8x, right?
So this is a good question. This is why I did it this way, right? This factors like this, right? Factors of 16, 4 and 4, that add to give you 8, 4 and 4, right? So then you can just write it like this. So there's a shortcut going on, right? If you write it as 4 squared, you just take that sign and then whatever you're saying it is squared. Is that okay?
You just do what you did on the bottom right and plug that into what you did on the top left.
So I do this because someone's always asking about what happened to the 8x. If you're asked to complete the square, then because I'm going to do another problem so you can see it again, and there's going to be fractions involved, and so you're probably not going to want to do this because you're not going to want to think of the fractions. So then this is just all that it takes.
So why isn't it x squared?
So right, the same reason as it was in x squared here. Is that okay? Because right, I mean, like if we foiled this, like if we had this, right, and then we separated them because it's a squared, and then FOILed it, we'd get this, right? So that's why it's not squared, because it got factored. Is that okay? I know it's weird, but just give it a second. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides. What happens when you take the square root of something squared? All right, so then we're left with what on that? So we got x plus 4. We did take the square root, so we have a plus or minus square root of 2. And now we subtract 4 over. So it's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 2. Is that okay? Now in your notes, I stopped here at 4. Add to both sides. So that was up here. We add to both sides. Step 5, if you need them in your notes, would be factor, but I always put that in parentheses or in quotations, because it's not like you're really factoring. So step 5 would be factor.
So that's the answer right there?
Yeah, this is the answer right here. Yep. Factor, but I always use the shortcut. Use shortcut. I'm going to do it again. And then if you need more, I do this because I like you guys. Don't tell the other classes that I like you guys. I'm recording it, so they might find out. But what am I kidding? They're not going to listen to this anyway. So, if you're from another class and you listen to it, I apologize ahead of time. All right? Square root both sides. I don't want anyone to feel bad, Kaylee. People get very sensitive. Not you guys, of course. You guys are tough. Barely. People don't even listen to me while I'm talking. I could say anything. Well, of course, now it's recorded, so then you could go back and listen to it. Square root both sides, and then, finish the problem. I don't know. So, finish. Do it. All right. You ready to say it one more time? Seems kind of crazy, doesn't it? It's my backup vocals. You didn't even know I had backup vocals, did you? All right. So I'm just going off those notes that I just gave you. All right. And so here it goes. We can't do this with A being 4, so we got to divide everything by 4. Have to. That's just one of the rules. So then I'm going to say that it's x squared minus x minus 99 over 4. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Divide everything by 4. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right, that's just something. Completing a square does not work if A is not 1. All right, step number 2 was move C to the other side, so I'm going to add it over there. So now we have x squared minus x equals 99 over 4. And then you guys that were not understanding why you want to know the shortcut, I think you're going to figure it out here. Are we okay right now?
Yeah.
All right, the next step was to take b off to the side. So b in this case is 1. You don't have to worry about the negative. All right, so it's 1, and we're going to multiply it by 1/2. And what does that give us? All right, but I want you to leave it as a fraction. Okay, so 1/2. Then you take that number that you just found, 1/2, and you're going to square it. 1/4. Is that okay? So now you're going to add this number to both sides. But what I'm saying is you should add 1/2 squared to the left and then 1/4 to the right. And the reason that you want to do that is because you don't want to mess with A times C method and think to yourself, okay, 1 times 1/4 is 1/4. Factors of 1/4 that add to give you -1. You don't want to mess with that. Right? So this is just sitting there ready for you to change. You're going to factor it. But here's how it goes again. You have an x. You take this sign, minus. you take whatever's in parentheses here, 1/2 squared, and that's factored. It's done. It's a shortcut. I found that shortcut for you guys once, years ago. You guys weren't even like, you guys didn't even know anything about factoring back then. I was already working for you guys. Did you know that? Yeah, what do you got?
What if the margin number before the negative, or do you not worry about that?
So we had to add it over here. So, yeah, so we had to add it over here. What you don't have to worry about is this being -1, because we're going to square it anyway. Okay, and so it's always going to be positive. And then you also take care of that sign right here also.
You just
Okay.
simplify 100 over 4.
Yeah, so that's going to be what? 25. So then we have x minus 1/2 squared equals 25.
And can't you do the square root of both of them?
All right, so we take the square root of both of them. What's on the left-hand side?
X minus 1/2.
Equals plus or minus. Don't forget about that. 5.
Then you add 1/2.
All right, so then you say it's 1/2 plus or minus 5. And so you simplify as far as you can. So you're going to say, well, it's 5.5. And it also could be -4.5. Is that okay? Because, right, because it's,
How can it be negative?
isn't that right? Is it 1/2 minus 5? Isn't that what it
Would
is?
just be 4.5?
Well, isn't it 1/2 minus 5?
Oh, yeah.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah. That's
Lauren, are you watching the dot? Are you watching that dot, Lauren? Are you starting to get tired?
I'm just gonna touch it.
Dude, don't touch it. Does it make you sleepy though?
Why is
Come
it
here.
-4 again?
Because, right, because, like, you know what this is saying, right? This says that it has to be 1/2 plus 5,
Oh, and then 1/2.
and 1/2 minus 5, right? Okay?
Can we leave it as x equals 1/2 plus or minus 5?
I would rather you guys get to this, oh, you can't see me. I'd rather you get to here because we're gonna end up needing these information. If this was a square root of 5 or something, then you just leave it. You don't mess with it, okay? Try to simplify as far as you can though. All right, so there's only one more way to do it, and do it by solving quadratics, at least that I know of. Quadratic formula. So what's the quadratic formula?
Negative b.
X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
There, very good. Make sure you know that.
Nice.
That works every time, every single time. You gotta watch your signs, you gotta watch your squaring. She has that memorized, man. She has that memorized. I got that thing tattooed. Well, I can't tell you where I got it tattooed, but I got that thing tattooed on me somewhere.
Push.
Yeah. All right, do we need to do one of these, or do we know how to use that thing?
Might as well do one.
Let's do one. We could even do one of your homework problems. Which one do you want to do?
What we got?
You got to get up to 81. 43 to 81 odd.
There you go.
81? That's a good one. All right, let's do 81. Now we could do completing the square with ax squared plus bx plus c. And I can show you where this thing comes from. And it's super awesome. But I don't want to hear you guys complain and get confused. So, all right, so you actually do not know what a, b, and c are yet because they're not all on the same side of the equation. It does not matter which side we move it to. I'm going to subtract the 8t, but please, please, please get it all set equal to 0 before you start messing around with it. How's that? Does everybody feel good about A, B, and C?
Yeah.
All right, so,
Wait.
what?
Don't you have to get a by it, or
What?
don't you have to make it to where the two's not there and a?
No, only on completing the square. On quadratic formula, you're not too worried about anything.
Okay.
All right, except for your signs. So x equals what? 8 plus or minus.
8 squared.
Okay, now to be careful because don't mess up there. That's always going to be positive because we're squaring. Minus 4 times
2,
times
5. Over.
all of that is over 2 times 2. All right. So then we got 8 plus or minus the square root of 64. Was that minus 40? Over 4. Does that look okay? Did I do that right? Quadratic formula, baby.
Can't you just put that in your calculator?
So you can actually, if you have your own calculator, you can actually program it, or you can just type in A, B, and C, and it'll do it for you. Only problem is it will give you a decimal, and so then your answers will not always be accurate. But yeah, you can do that. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You can do that on your own. But if you got one of those, they'll get reset and they'll be wiped clean anyway. So, what should you do with that 24? Factor tree, good. So what does that simplify to be? 2 and 6. So then we have 2 and 6. And since that number and this number, where'd it go? And this number all can be divided by 2. You can do that also. So then the final answer, the final answer will be 4 plus or minus the square root of 6 over 2. And then you can leave it that way. You don't have to separate them. How was that? That was pretty good for me. I feel pretty dang good right now.